Good evening. My name is John H. and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar. What we're going to do in this seminar, guys, is we're going to go through the first 164 pages of our big book, our Guide to Freedom, and we're going to do exactly what it says. I myself am no big book guru. I am no spiritual wonder man. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple recovered alcoholics took me through the book. I did the work, and it saved my life. Now, as a result of that, I try to pass on what has been so freely given to me. Now, I borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes. I borrow heavily from that smartass Clancy. I borrow from Chuck C. I borrow from all of the giants who have gone before me. So please, get yourself a big book, large print I prefer, a highlighter and a pen, and bring your willingness. Get ready to change your life. Thanks for listening. Good evening, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now deceased, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic book, using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basics, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with a set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. So last week we talked about resentments. Resentments are the number one offender. They kill more alcoholics than anything else. When we do the fourth step, I was thinking about this. We incorrect judgment, right? That's our resentments of other people. It's incorrect judging of other people. Our fears are incorrect perception, right? We're perceiving things incorrectly. And the hurts and the harms that we do other people is incorrect treatment of other people. I mean, if we're judging incorrectly, we're perceiving incorrectly, and we're treating people incorrectly, no wonder our lives are a mess. I mean, no wonder my life was unbearable without alcohol. It was absolutely unbearable without alcohol. And then when alcohol turned on me, it was unbearable with alcohol. So here I am. I can't drink and I can't quit, and I'm in a world of hurt, right? Well, what the steps do is they make life bearable without alcohol, right? Able to be endured. Then they make life tenable without alcohol, right? Able to be maintained or defended against, right? And then eventually what's going to happen is the steps are going to make our lives preferable, right? More desirable or more suitable without alcohol than it was when we were drinking. So the whole key that I discovered doing the fourth step was understanding the basic instincts of life. I cannot get angry or resentful at anybody unless one of my basic instincts is threatened. And it might be my self-esteem, right? It might be my personal relationships. It might be my security. Somebody's going after my commission check, right? It might be my ambitions for the future, right? It might be my desire to be with the opposite sex, my sexual, ambitions. And so I cannot get angry and I cannot get afraid unless some of my basic instincts of life are being attacked, right? And I'm perceiving this attack and I'm lashing out. So, I'm going to do a quick little review on the resentments. By the way, everybody that's got that folder, make copies of the sheets, right? Of the resentments, the fears, and the hurts and harm sheets. Make copies of them. And what we're going to do, and we're praying through this whole process, by the way. I when I first started my 4th step, I was running into difficulty, and my sponsor said, "Well, are you praying?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I'm doing this." And he said, "No, you've got to be praying." So when we're writing the names in column 1, and incidentally, we're going to do column 1 first. So we are going to write down every person, every institution, and every principle that we are resentful at. We're going to do that whole thing first. Then we're going to go back and we're going to go to column 2. And in column 2, we're going to write down in just a few words why we have that resentment, right? Why we have it. And then in column 3, we're going to get out our definition sheet and we're going to go across reading our definitions and we're going to put check marks in what part of self is being affected by the resentment that we're feeling, right? And then eventually what's going to happen is when we get all this done, we're going to see patterns. We're going to see patterns on that we get angry when no matter who does it, we're going to get angry and people do certain things to us. And then we're going to see patterns that it's always a threat against one of our basic instincts that makes us angry. And as we're going to see today, also makes us fearful, right? Because this is exactly the same sheet for our fears as it is for our resentments, right? And then we get to the important part, which is what is the exact nature of my wrongs, faults, my mistakes. Now when we get to column 4, again, we got our definition sheet, but what we do, and it's so important, is we put out of our mind what this person did. We, Eric's wife cheated, right? So we talked about that. We put out of our mind what Eric's wife did, and then we look at what was the nature of Eric's wrongs, faults, or mistakes in the way that he treated her and the way that he acted in his marriage, right? And we get to learn a lot when we do that. So, like I said last week, if my basic instincts are under control and my relationship with God is good, right? My boss can do something to me that's quite bad, right? And it might hurt me a little bit, but it's going to slide right off my back, and I'm going to say, the poor guy's having a bad day. He's spiritually unfit today. Maybe something's going on. Now, if my instincts are out of control, I'm worried about my money, I'm worried about what people are thinking about me, right? If my instincts are out of control and I don't have a good relationship with God, my boss can do the exact same thing to me a week later, and I can fly off the handle, and I can go nuts, and I can lash out, doing the same exact thing, right? Funny enough, when we do column 1, with the resentments, we're going to actually see how angry we are, right? And how that's blocking us off from God. When we do column 2 all the way through, we're going to see that it's not the people that we're angry with, but it's what they've done to us that gets us angry. Now, when we get to column 3, we're going to understand that it's not even what these folks have done to us, but it's how we react against a threat to one of our basic instincts of life, or one of our basic instincts for survival, if you will, right? So, I wonder if I should run another column. Eventually, what we're going to do is we're going to look at our resentments differently, right? I used to look at those sons of bitches, what they're doing to me, God, they're doing to me, right? Instead, what we do is we look and we see what that resentment is doing to me. That resentment, I'm doing it to myself. And it's making me angry, it's blocking me from God, it's blocking me from my fellows, it's stopping me from doing anything worthwhile, and it's getting me closer to thinking about taking a drink, right? So when I'm blocked off from God and I'm angry, my mind wants to feel better, and the only thing I can ever remember is the ease and comfort that comes for taking just a couple of drinks. Next thing you know, I become insane. I think it's okay to take a drink. I take the drink, I trigger the allergy, and I wake up somewhere sick, in trouble, and absolutely hurting. So I always thought that I stood on my own feet, right? I get to run the show. I do everything. I control everything. And when I did the 4-step, I saw that that's not true, because there are people who are dead and buried that are still controlling my life, right? What somebody did to me 10 years ago, what somebody did to me 20 years ago, if they're still in my thoughts and they're running my thinking, they're still controlling my life. Now, when we do the 4-step, the way that I was taught, which is the way it is in the book, what a miracle happens is that 95% of these resentments tend to leave us automatically when we see how stupid they are, and we see what the exact nature of our wrongs is and how we got a lot of them started, right? But some of them are not going to go away, right? There are those that are going to stay with us. And we're going to shoot over to page 551 in the book, and we're going to read a little story. 551. Okay, so we're at 551. Let's go to the first full paragraph. This is from the story Freedom from Bondage. I've had many spiritual experiences, and I think it's the 4th edition. It's Freedom from Bondage if you're in a 3rd edition. I'm not exactly sure what the page is. I've had many spiritual experiences since I've been in the program, many that I didn't recognize right away, for I'm slow to learn, and they take many guises. But one was so outstanding that I like to pass it on whenever I can in the hope that it will help someone else as it has me. As I said earlier, self-pity and resentment were my constant companions, and my inventory began to look like a 33-year diary, for I seemed to have a resentment against everybody I had ever known. All but one responded to the treatment. Underline that, responded to the treatment. In other words, this woman was lucky. Just about all of her resentments went away when she did the 4th and 5th step. That's what the treatment is. Suggested in the steps immediately, right? So everything went away right away. But this one posed a problem. This resentment was against my mother. And it was 25 years old. I had fed it, fanned it, and nurtured it as one might a delicate child, and it had become as much a part of me as my breathing. It provided me with excuses for my lack of education. That's BS, man. My marital failures, BS. Personal failures, inadequacy, and of course my alcoholism. And though I really thought I had been willing to part with it, now I knew it, I was reluctant to let it go. So she has a resentment against her mother, and she can't get rid of it, man. One morning, however, I realized I had to get rid of it, for my reprieve was running out. Underline that. My reprieve was running out, and if I didn't get rid of it, I was going to get drunk. Highlight to there. And I didn't want to get drunk anymore. In my prayers that morning, okay, off to the right, pray. Okay, that's the first thing that this woman, she prayed, right? In my prayers that morning, I asked God to point out to me some way to be free of this resentment. During the day, a friend of mine brought me some magazines to take to a hospital group I was interested in. Next to that, right, help others.
John, where are you?
I'm sorry, we're Freedom from Bondage on page 551.
Yeah, the paragraph 51.
We're at the top of 552 now. Got her?
Okay, thank you.
So next to brought me some magazines to take to a hospital group I was interested in, right, helping others, right? So first of all, she prayed. Now she's helping others, right? I looked through them. A banner across one featured an article by a prominent clergyman in which I caught the word resentment. We're going to highlight the whole, I'd say, the next 10 lines. He said, in effect, if you have a resentment you want to be free of, if you will pray for the person or the thing that you resent, you will be free. If you will ask in prayer for everything you want for yourself to be given to them, you will be free. Ask for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free. Even when you don't really want it for them and your prayers are only words and you don't mean it, and that's me, right? Well, most of the time, at least that's how I start. Go ahead and do it anyway. Do it every day for 2 weeks and you will find you have come to mean it. You can stop highlighting there and to want it for them. And you will realize that where you used to feel bitterness and resentment and hatred, you now feel compassionate understanding and love. It worked for me then, and it has worked for me many times since, and it will work for me every time I am willing to work it. Sometimes I have to ask first for the willingness, but 2 always comes. And because it works for me, it will work for all of us. As another great man says, the only real freedom a human being can ever know is doing what you ought to do because you want to do it. This great experience that released me from the bondage of hatred, and hatred is a bondage, man, and replaced it with love is really just another affirmation of the truth I know. I get everything I need in Alcoholics Anonymous, and everything I need I get. And when I get what I need, I will invariably find that it was just what I wanted all the time. So this woman was lucky because, for me, all of mine didn't go away with the treatment, but 95% of them did. The other ones that remained, I had to pray for these people, and even an institution or 2, and I had to work with my sponsor. And some people get help from a counselor or a psychiatrist, and that's okay too. Some of these things we're going to need more help with than just doing the 4th and 5th step. But honest to God, when we do the 4th and 5th step, according to the Big Book, most of these resentments are going to go away of their own accord. And you know what? If you want to, and of course, there's justified resentments. I mean, there's a lot of justified resentments. But if you want to keep that resentment, by all means, don't pray about it, right? Don't pray about it. Now, I used to think, well, what's going to happen when I get rid of these resentments, man? I'm not going to be the same person. I'm not going to have the same drive to succeed at work and all of these things. Well, what happens is nature abhors a vacuum. So when we get rid of the resentments, God's going to fill up our head with love, patience, tolerance, compassion, and goodwill to my fellow man. And this is going to happen automatically. So the way I look at it for me is I got rid of my thinking, which was the resentments, and then I got God's thinking coming into my head, which is the love, patience, and tolerance of other people, right? And when we look at the exact nature of our wrongs, what we did to set these things in motion, that's going to help us so that we don't do these things in the future, so that they don't come back, right? So, I heard this woman the other day, and she was talking about guilt and shame. And she had been abused as a child. And when she did and a lot of the stuff that was done to her, she didn't have any wrongs in it because she was a kid. And she was talking about the difference between guilt and the difference and shame. And she said, guilt is when we've done something that's wrong and we feel guilt about it, right? And she said, and she had to get over her shame. She said, shame is when you think there's something wrong with you. Right? It's not something you did, but there's something wrong with you, and you think that you're worthless, right? And she went on to point out that the people don't harm us because we deserve it. They don't harm us because we're defective. They harm us because these people are spiritually sick, and they're going to do it to anybody, right? They do it to anybody. So again, we got to keep praying when we're doing this, in all aspects of it. And for me, it was particularly I had to ask for God's help to see the exact nature of my wrongs in all of these things that I did. So some people vary on but if you really have a lot of resentments for some people on your list, some people say you start praying for them every day to have everything you would want in your life, and when you come to mean it for them, you cross them off their list. And when we're praying for somebody, that does not mean that we approve of what they did, right? That just means that we want to be free of the resentment that is controlling my head. I mean, I got to tell you guys, I'm a commissioned salesman, and how can I work in a Shark Tank and not be eaten up with resentment that somebody took something from me that was mine, damn it, or fear that I'm not going to get something on my day off and I'm going to lose those commissions, right? Well, we do it by practicing the principles of this program. So what we learn when we do the resentment part is that I cannot do anything about any other human beings on earth, but I can do something about my relationship with God and keeping my basic instincts under control so I don't have to get angry. If I don't have to get angry, I'm in much less chance of drinking than I am if I just continue to get angry over and over and over like I used to do, right? So again, in column 1, we learn how resentful we are. Man, when I saw how many resentments I had, I couldn't believe it. So we learn how resentful we really are and how that blocks us off from the sunlight of Spirit. In column 2, we realize that it's not even the people we're mad at, it's what they've done to us. In column 3, we realize it's not even what they've done to us, it's how we chose to react to it based on our relationship with God and whether our basic instincts are under control or not. The woman in the book that we just read about, she blamed everything on her mother. Her lack of education, her failed marriage, her alcoholism. I mean, that's all nonsense, man. She became an alcoholic because she drank lots of whiskey, right? Her marriage failed because she didn't work at it. She didn't get education because she didn't go back to school, right? So again, when we do this last, and it's very important, what is the exact nature of my wrongs? When we get to this part, we don't say, well, what's my part? Because that indicates that they have a part. And our book is very specific that we want to disregard the other person entirely when we look at the exact nature of my wrong. So what did I do wrong, right? I try to live by these principles. I had... I think I might have talked about it with Andrew on Saturday morning, but I had I've got a customer at work. This is an account that I've had for the last 3 years. And my contact, the designer, right, who came in and I would meet with the clients, I'd do the selections, and of course, ka-ching, I'd get all the commissions. Well, she left and took a different job, right? And so now it's kind of a free-for-all, and they're coming in and just placing orders willy-nilly. But 90% of the work comes after the sale. So other salespeople are getting the commissions, but then they still call me to make sure that I can get the product, I can deliver the product, I can answer all questions about the product, and I can handle any complaints about the product, and I can get more and handle fires as they come up, right? So on Friday, I kind of I'm walking through the warehouse, and I see a huge deal going out for this particular account in a different salesperson's name, right? So what do? I get pissed, man. And I know better, right? So I see that, and I go home, right? And I'm working out and cleaning the house, and I'm getting angrier and angrier. Just right here, the anxiety in my chest. Thank God I wasn't around other people. But for about an hour, I was working out and cleaning the house, and then I went out and I started mowing the lawn. And I'm mowing the lawn, going, "Those dirty sons of bitches! When the problems arise, I'm going to tell them that I'm not helping them." And I'm going. All this crap is going on, and I'm having a horrible night. This went on for 3 hours, right? And I know better, right? And it's just, and finally after 3 hours, I'm like, okay, I better, because I do this in my head, right? And we're going to learn how to do that in step 10. So I go, okay, who am I mad at? Well, I'm mad at the guy who owns that company. Why am I mad? I'm not getting the commissions. Okay, what part of self is involved? Let me get out my little sheet here. Let me grab this. The definition sheet is very important. So I'm mad at him. I'm not getting the commissions. Let's see here. I might have to borrow your. Can I borrow your real quick? I don't know where mine went. Is this affecting my self-esteem? Let's look at the definition here. Self-esteem. What we think of ourselves, high or low. Well, it is, because, I thought for sure that guy was going to make sure that I got the commission. So, yeah, that's affecting my self-esteem negatively. I might not be top of the sales list, so that's affecting my self-esteem. Is it affecting my personal relationships? Thank God I didn't have to go out with other people that night, because I would have been the worst company in the world. Is it affecting my security instinct? Wanting money, property, clothing? You bet it's affecting my material. My emotional, based on our need for another person or persons? Yeah, because I want to get the acclaim of being the top sales guy. Possibly the sex instinct. If I would have had a date that night, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But it's going to affect my ambitions in the future, my security ambitions, right? My plans, because I want the future business out of that company, right? So it's absolutely affecting my basic instincts. And I was reacting with that anger, and nobody was even around. I was alone. And I was reacting against a threat to my basic instincts, right? And I just had a horrible night. So all of a sudden, I'm mad at Mike. I'm not getting the commissions. It's affecting this part of me. Okay, what's the exact nature of my wrongs? Let's look at my wrongs here. Dishonest, I don't think dishonesty has anything to do with it. Selfish, absolutely selfish. Where is selfish on here? Strictly material, property, money, housing. I want all the commissions on that account. I want every last one, damn it. Self-seeking. What I want matters more than what you want. My needs matter more than yours. My feelings or comfort comes first. They better go out of their way to make sure that I get those damn commissions, doggone it. Because I've been servicing that account. They better take care of me. Of course, what I want matters more. Frightened, fear of not being accepted, fear of my wants, needs not being met. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to lose that account, man. I'm very frightful. Inconsiderate. Did I fail to consider how they felt, their wants, their needs? Well, you know what, man? They might have come in on a Friday night when I was off having fun doing something else. I wasn't there, and somebody might have worked with them for a good long time, and they might have had a time constraint where they had to get that deal placed. So, I absolutely was inconsiderate both to the salesperson that had the deal and to the guy in the company, right? So I ran through this and I go, oh boy, I'm not showing up too good here, the exact nature of my wrongs. So then what we do, and this is a little bit of step 10, but I was taught that immediately I hit my knees and I say, God, I don't want to feel this way, please take it away. And then immediately I turn my thoughts to somebody I can help. So I called a couple of people that I'm working with, and I texted a few other people about things, and boom, my resentment was gone. So I suffered like a son of a bitch for 3 hours. Yeah! And I was alone, thank God. But when I went through the process, it went away. So and that's what I usually do a little bit quicker. But that's how these weave right into step 10. So let's see where I was. So these resentments.
Can I ask?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of justified though, since if you help them on the back end all the time. But
sure
it is. You don't have to. You could say, well, I didn't take that order, let me get you to
No, I know, and you're right, but basically it's how can I get rid of that resentment, because it's getting me closer to taking a drink. It's making my life miserable, and I do got to look at it. I do got to understand that maybe there were circumstances that I don't understand, and you know what? And I'm going to talk about it a little bit later. When I really think about it, things go so much better for me at work when I say, you know what, man, I'm here to serve my company. I'm here to serve my boss. I'm here to serve all of the customers of my company, not just mine. Things go a lot better when I try to look at things that way, which is principles. But these doggone resentments, right? I look at, I stand on my own feet. Well, I look at what the cop did to me 5 years ago. I look what my uncle did to me 10 years ago. I look what my mom did to me 15 years ago. What my dad did to me 20 years ago, right? Or maybe 40 years ago, and they never came to any of my sports games, right? When I was a kid, right? And these guys are controlling my damn thinking. People who are long gone and they're dead, they're controlling my thinking, they're controlling my life. Right? So in column 4, we look at what we did to get the ball rolling, and if we had no part in it, then we're gonna see maybe that we were inconsiderate, that these people were perhaps spiritually ill. But again, we want to look at the exact nature of my wrongs, my mistakes, right? Where was I selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? And when I hear somebody's 5th step, I don't care that they committed adultery 42 times. I don't care that they stole 324 times. I don't care that they lied 10,526 times, right? I don't care about that. What I care about is what caused him to do this in the first place. And that's what we talk about in step 5. These are the defects I will become willing to let go of in 6. They're the shortcomings I'm going to ask God to take away in 7. I've got all the names from my list in step 8. and the amends that I'm going to make in step 9. Right? So we cannot go forward in these steps if we don't do this. This is the key to everything. This is the key to everything, the 4th and 5th step. And this is where people leave, right? Whether I'm sponsoring a one-on-one or whether in Code Blue, we get to this section and people don't want to look at it, man. They take off. And somebody said, John, you better go to Al-Anon, and maybe I should. I don't, what he said? He said, John, what you got to understand is, people, the alcoholics, because I'm 6 years removed, they're sick. They can't control it. We started with a lot more. Some are out drinking. Maybe some are home being miserable. I don't know, but what I do know is that I have no control. All I can do is show them what I did, and if they're willing to accept it and do it, they're going to get better. If they're not, all I can do is pray for them. So justified resentments block us off from God just as much as unjustified resentments, right? So are we justified in having these resentments? Absolutely, if we want to get drunk, right? It controls your thinking, it controls your decisions, it controls your life. You're giving people that are probably sleeping soundly at night, or maybe they're dead, you're giving these people the power to actually kill you, right? We say in alcohol, if they hadn't have done that to me, I wouldn't have to be the way I am today, damn it. That's victimization. That's victimization, and we don't have any place for that in AA. We are all adults, and what happened to us in the past does not have to control what we do today. And the funny thing about a resentment, anybody in this room who has a resentment in their head right now, it's not true. I guarantee you the resentment is not true. It might be based on truth. It might be partially true. But when we play a resentment over and over and over in our head, we have distorted it. We have to remember, every time we replay the resentment, what they did gets a little bit worse. The harm they caused us gets a little bit deeper, and what we did to get them going at us becomes a little bit less. And we do that over and over again, and we're white as the driven snow, and we're a victim, and it's all their damn fault, right? So people do things to us. We got to understand that perhaps they're not bad people, but maybe they're sick people, right? And if it's not us that they're giving it to, maybe it's somebody else, right? So if we can consider this, maybe we can start to straighten out some relationships while people are still alive, right? Once people are dead, it's too late. Both my parents are now dead, and I really wish that I could have sobered up and gone to them while they were still alive, but they're gone. Now, when we pray for other people, that does not mean we're going to take them hand in hand and we're going to skip down the primrose path, right? And it doesn't mean that we approve of what these people did. All it means is that we want to get rid of the resentments that's been controlling our lives, right? We want to get rid of them. And a lot of them, too, the funny thing about resentments is they can be real or they can be imagined. I discovered that many of my resentments, I made it all up, right? I mean, it wasn't even real. So, by the way, I think it was last summer, I was reading a Tony Hillerman novel. He's writes about an Indian detective. And the Navajo people, they actually have a healing ceremony for somebody suffering from resentment. They say somebody who's got resentment is a very sick person, and they actually have a big healing ceremony to get rid of the resentment so that that person can become well. And I mean, that's pretty much, I think, what we're doing right here. Right? So before we start fear, again, a quick review. We're going to see how many resentments we have. By the way, we put them on paper because we can only see one resentment at a time in our head. That's why we put them on paper. We see how they blocked us off from God. We see it's not the people, but what they've done to us that we resent. It's not even what they've done to us, but how we react to a threat against our basic instincts. We see these resentments are a waste of time. They tend to paralyze us from doing anything worthwhile. These resentments never do us any good. They never straighten out relationships. They never make us money, right? These resentments never make us feel better, only worse. They block us off from God. We don't feel good. We become insane. We start to think about taking a drink, right? And some of us end up drunk all over again. We see how people have controlled us and dominated us through our lives through these resentments. And honest to God, when we get them on paper, we're going to see how stupid they are. And I guarantee 95% of them are going to disappear automatically. The other 5% we're going to deal with through prayer, therapy, and work with our sponsor. The amazing thing is when we get rid of these resentments, God replaces them with the opposite, right? With serenity, a little bit of peace of mind, a little bit of happiness, some compassion, some love, and some goodwill to our fellow man. No, I'm not saying that God never gave us anything bad, right? So there are such a thing as a good resentment, right? Let's say that I'm sitting around the tile shop, and I'm over in the corner with some people, and we're talking and we're complaining about how slow it is, and we're bemoaning our fate, and we're saying those sons of bitches in the office, right? And all of a sudden I see this guy at the other end. This guy gets out his lead folder. He's calling lead after lead after lead. He's done with that. He goes over there and he starts cleaning up his area in the store and making it look better. And I'm going, well, that dirty son of a bitch, right? But I see that and I go, well, I better get out my leads and I better call all my leads. You know what? I better go over there and I better clean up my section of the store. And that's a resentment used in a good way, right? We alcoholics, though, what we do is when he goes to the bathroom, we grab his lead book, we take it outside and burn it, right? That's what alcoholics do. All right, so when we do this, we are in much less chance of getting drunk, And again, when we do the fourth column, we see what we did, because a lot of times we have done something to get these resentments started. And even if we've done nothing, we've got to see that maybe we were inconsiderate in the fact that this person is spiritually ill and maybe they've got something going on, right? And again, we can use the ultimate tool, which is prayer, because I think if you pray for somebody, I don't think that hatred and love can exist on the same plane. So that's why when you continue to pray for somebody, it's eventually that resentment is eventually gonna leave you. So I guess we are on to fears. So we'll read. We only got one page in the book, and then I'm going to run a few columns and talk a little bit about fear. So let's go back to. Let's see what page we're on. 50. Nope, we're on page 67. 67. Yep, and the last paragraph on page 67. Okay, and where we have end of resentments, where it says these matters straight, a line across the book, and under that line write start of fear. So again, the three parts of the fourth step are resentment, fear, and sex and harms that we've done others. Notice that the word fear, okay, everybody, page 67, last paragraph, underline fear. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. Highlight to the end of the page. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? So at the bottom of the page, we're going to write a little question. Ask yourself, how much does fear play a role in your life? Right? And this is also an ask sponsee. Right? So you can put ask sponsee, but you also ask yourself, how much does fear play a role in your lives? I had a real trouble, thinking, I'm not afraid of anything, doggone it. Well, what I really came to understand that I was afraid of everything, and it was so all-encompassing that I couldn't see it. How much does fear play a role in your lives? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. Okay, so highlight the next 4 lines. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper. Even though we had no resentments in connection with them, we asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Okay, so our fear list. Oop, I gave you your sheet back, didn't I?
No, it's right here.
Oh, grab it. Grab that there. Find another one here. So fear. These. Tell me, you don't have it in here either.
This one?
Oh, I got it. My glossary, okay. So, fear, these sheets that we have are exactly the same with fear, right? So, when we've got our resentments done, we're going to do our fear list, right? And it's basically the same exact thing. Let's see here. I am fearful of, and the cause. And we've got sheets in there to help you look for places for resentments and for fears and for the harms, right? So here we are. So when we get to our fear columns, it's the same exact thing. I am fearful of. Why do I have the fear? And then everything else is the same. So I'm going to go ahead and, you guys that remember last week when I did the resentment column for Eric, again, he gave me all permission to do this. So I'm going to do a fear column based on Eric's wife cheating again, right? So Eric is fearful of, let's say, wife leaving, right? Why does he have the fear? Well, she's been cheating on him, right? So Eric's ex-wife now is both on his resentment list and she's on his fear list. And as we're going to see, she's also on his harms list because he harmed her on all three. And we're going to see that many of these people are going to be on all three lists. My boss, right? I'm madder than hell at him, right? Terrified of him because he can fire me. And I also caused him a lot of harm, right? On all three of my lists. The IRS, madder than hell, they're taking all my money. I'm afraid that they're going to put me in jail, right? Well, I harmed them because I didn't pay them what I owed them, right? They're on all of us, my family, madder than hell at them because they wanted me to go to treatment, right? Family, scared to death because they're going to cut me out of my dad's will because I'm an alcoholic, right? And I harmed them all, so they're on all of my lists, right? Salespeople, madder than hell, they scooped me, right? I'm afraid of them that they're gonna, that they're gonna scoop me in the future, or they're gonna tell that I did something wrong, and they're also on my harms list because I scooped them in the past. So many of these people are on all of our lists. So let's take a look. Eric's afraid his wife's gonna leave. Why? Because she's cheating and they don't get along. Okay, so this is a fear. So fears, a feeling of anxiety, agitation, uneasiness, apprehension, etc., may be temporary or continual. Well, this was a continual fear for him. I mean, it was not only that she was going to leave him, but just how they were going to get along and everything. So let's see how this fear that she might leave him, how it affected Eric. Self-esteem, what we think of ourselves, high or low. I can't, oh my gosh, that's a big negative, right? Right? And this is constant. Personal relationships, our relations with other human beings in the world around us involves a third party, not his wife. Do not use the person from column one, only others. Well, his personal relationships, he was so afraid of this that other people would see it that he wouldn't go out with other people because it might come up. So it affected all of his personal relationships, right? With people other than his wife. He was afraid that he was going to look like a schmuck, right? Because he's afraid she's cheating and she's going to leave me. That's a double whammy. Security, your natural tendencies or feelings of safety, freedom from danger, harm, material, wanting money, property, clothing, housing, vehicles, etc. in order to be secure. Well, by golly, when she leaves, she's going to take half of everything, maybe more than half. Emotional support. Well, she's taking the kids too. Let's check that one. Sex instinct. Well, we're not having any sex, right? That's out the window. Hidden sex relations, again, that would be, she was the one that was having the affairs, not him. So I'm not going to check it. How did that affect his ambitions for the future? Social ambitions, your plans to gain acceptance, power, recognition, prestige. Well, what's the use if she's going to leave me anyway, right? Security ambitions. Well, I'm not going to take that promotion, make the extra money, buy a bigger house, because she's going to get that too, right? Sexual ambitions. I thought I was going to be with this woman for the rest of my life, but obviously that's out the window. So this fear, and of course the resentment was very similar to this, is affecting every aspect of his life, right? All the parts that make up the self, you know. And again, now we got to look, what is the exact nature of Eric's wrongs, Eric's faults, Eric's mistakes? Again, putting out of mind, you know, anything that she might have done. Selfish. Let's see that selfish one here. Oh, by the way, exact, accurate, methodical, correct. We've got to look at this. Nature, the essential characteristic of a thing. Wrong, acting, judging, or believing incorrectly. False, something done wrongly, an error, mistake. Selfish, strictly money, property, housing, clothing, vehicles, etc. Well, again, you know, we did talk about last week about how Eric would spend family money on motorcycles and snowmobiles and things of that nature. So he was selfish, right? His selfishness is helping to drive his wife away. Dishonest. To commit, to out and out lie, and then to omit what he didn't say. Well, you know, once all of this started, he was very dishonest, saying that it didn't bother him, and he wasn't worried about it, and he's not gonna work on it with a counselor. He was very dishonest. Self-seeking. What I want matters more than what you want. My needs matter more than yours. My feelings or comfort comes first. When he really looked back on it, he said, you know what, man? I can't believe that she didn't leave me sooner because of the expectations I put on her. I was always the one that decided where we went to dinner, where we went on vacations. I'm the one that decided that we're going to buy this house, right? So he was always doing that, right? Frightened, fear of not being accepted, fear of his needs. Of course, he's terrified that she's going to leave her. That's a check. Inconsiderate. Did I fail to consider how she felt, her wants, her needs, her beliefs, and how I affected them? He said, you know what, man? I absolutely did. You know, and again, when we were doing our fifth step, you know, and we got to his wife, he said, there's no way I'm going to go make amends to her, by the way. You know, and I said, we're not there yet. Don't worry. We're not there. Don't even worry about step 9. We're not at step 9. We're not even done with 5 yet. So, but eventually, that was one of the first ones that he did, right? So this is how we run the columns. And this definition sheet should be all crinkled up but by the time you're done, because we've got to understand these basic instincts, because again, we cannot get angry or fearful unless one of our basic instincts is threatened, right? And it's based on how we react to that, right? And then when we look at this part right here, this is what's going to keep these darn fears and resentments from coming back. Okay, so we'll finish reading a little bit here. So we reviewed our fears. So again, the instructions are just like the resentments. Write down every fear that you've got. Write all of it down, and then we do column 2. Why do we have the fear? Right, and we're going to start to see some patterns in column 2. And then when we're done with those 2 columns, we're going to do column 3 over and over again. And we're going to start to see that maybe we're somebody who really gets pissed off when our self-esteem is attacked. Maybe we're somebody that gets really upset, full of fear and angry when our security instinct, you know, oh my God, you know, when that is affected. So we're going to start to see patterns in step 3 of what makes us become full of fear and full of anger. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? You know, self-reliance, if self-reliance worked for the alcoholic, AA would teach us how to better manage our lives, right? Forget about our life becoming unmanageable in step 1. We're going to teach you how to manage your life, right? Well, we have failed at it, right? So that self-reliance, and I got to tell you, for a commission salesman, that's a very tough concept for me to grasp, right? but I've got to understand that I'm responsible for the effort, but there's nothing I can do about the outcome, right? And I'll talk a little bit about surrender here in a little bit. But it was very hard for me to get my self-reliance. That doesn't mean that I sit on the couch and don't do anything. That means I try my best in every situation, but I know that I can't control the outcome, so I don't stress out about it. As long as I've done my best, I'm done, right? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so. Underline, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. Just that right there. And next to it, write third step. Third step. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. Underline to the end of the paragraph. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. Next to that, we're going to write fourth step promise. Fourth step promise. So, I don't know about you guys, but being an alcoholic, I'm a catastrophizer. Everything's a catastrophe. Oh my God, it's the end of the world, right? Well, no. Today when things are starting to go crazy all around me, instead of running around with my hair on fire and freaking out, right? I'm not perfect, but I can actually remain calm and try to help others and try to deal with stuff rather than going nuts. My friend Eric, and I think he might be here to talk to us next week for about 15 minutes on the fourth step and what it did for him. I hope he'll make it. We worked together, and he got sober, and we're working through these steps, and he sobers up, and he ends up getting divorced. Right, he gets divorced. Right when he starts to get sober up, he gets divorced. All of a sudden, he discovers that he's got cancer. Right, what a gift! I got sober, now I get divorced. Now I got cancer. He can't work. He loses his job. He loses his house. Right, he loses his house. His wife goes and marries somebody else. They screw up his paperwork. A doctor put a little line in there that's saying he could work if he wanted to. He was sicker than a dog, right? He doesn't get his disability for 2 years. So he's got no house, no job, no money, and he's divorced. And yet, he worked through these steps. And when you said, Eric, how are you doing? You know what his answer is? I've never been better. I've never been better? That's every fear coming true. Whenever things are going bad for me, I look at this guy and I'm like, oh my God, this guy, ostensibly I'm his sponsor, but he's the one that's giving me strength and faith in this thing, right? And to this day, finally he did, after I think 3 years or maybe 3.5 years, he did get his disability worked out. And he still has cancer. He's still on chemotherapy. Part of the time he lives here, half the time he stays with me when he does, and the other half he either stays in Iowa with his mom or he travels around the country visiting people. I always joke, you got the perfect life if you just didn't have cancer, So, but he laughs about it. He honestly says, you know what, man? He thanks God every day that he discovered this program and that he's and even days when he is so sick that he can't get out of bed, he says, physically I'm not doing too good today, but spiritually I'm doing great. So he's an example. And I hope he'll be here next week to talk to us. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages, highlight the next 3 lines. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Right to there. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. Then highlight to the end of the paragraph. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear. Okay, so that next to that, we're going to write fear prayer and fourth step promise. So we've got 2 4-step promises right here. Everybody talks about the promises after the 9th step, but we got 2 really good ones here. So the prayer is when we're got something that we're really afraid of, we say, hey God, this is going on. Could you please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be, right? And it says that at once we commence to outgrow fear, and that's a promise right there. Now that doesn't mean that we're going to have a life that's full of fear. That doesn't mean that at all. All that means is that we're going to be able to stay one step ahead of that doggone fear, right? I used to think that men of faith don't need any courage at all. They don't need any courage. They got faith. Well, that's not true, because do you know how much faith God gives us to do the job? He gives us just barely enough so that we can walk through our fear and go against what our head is telling us and try to get that job done, right? So, yes, the men of faith do have great courage. We're going to write one thing, by the way, draw a line through the whole page under outgrow fear, and above the line write end of fear. And then we're going to write one more thing. We're going to write fear blocks us from our talents. Fear blocks us from our talents. Crazy what fear does. Blocks us from our talents. All right, I'm going to read a little bit of this here. So, fears. The other thing too that we all have, fear blocks us from our talents. Keeps us from doing what we're good at, man. We also have, when you talk about principles, we have self-defeating beliefs, right? All of us have self-defeating beliefs, and those could be like the principles that we have resentment at. Like I talked last week. I'm in my early 50s. I'm not married. I don't have kids, so I'm less of a man, right? That's kind of a principle. Makes me angry, right? But it also causes me fear, because maybe I'm going to die alone, right? So we have self-defeating beliefs, things that we tell ourselves that make us think we are not worthwhile, right? So are these things true? We've got to ask ourselves, are we really substandard people? Right? If you think you aren't worthwhile, I'm going to tell you to think again and change your mind, right? Because God doesn't see anybody as substandard, and I don't think we should either, right? And it's important that people see who we really are, right? Because who you really are is okay, warts and all. I mean, my whole life I'm running around trying to get people to think I'm somebody who I wasn't. It was ridiculous. Does this mean that we don't have to change? No, that doesn't mean that. And a lot of people come into these rooms and they got the victim card going, and I got 7 years of bad luck. It's crazy, man. My life is horrible. Well, we got to remember that we are the architects of our own situations. We made our lives what they are. Nobody else did that. We did that. So it isn't bad luck. It's not bad people. We made our situation. We built our own life. And fear is going to steal from us. Fear is evil. When you're on your deathbed, I suspect that you are not going to regret the things that you did wrong. I would surmise that you're going to regret the things that you were afraid to try. Fear is going to rob you of your life, of your opportunities. It's going to block you from using your gifts and your talents. It blocks you from your fellows. It blocks you from God, right? I mean, it's, people, I get sober up. It's like, I don't think I'm going to like golf, right? I probably love golf. I just haven't had a chance to do it. Scuba diving isn't for me, right? I don't think it's for me. Oh, I could never go back to school. I'm too old to go back to school, right? Well, I better not speak up, right? If I speak up, somebody might think bad of me, right? So fear steals your life, right? I like this one. Well, I better not ask her out. She might say no, right? She might say no. Well, if she says no, I guess I won't be going out with her. Wait a minute. I'm not going out with her now. What's the difference, right? Oh, you know what? Oh, here's what it is. She's probably going to say, go out with you? A ridiculous, funny-looking moron with no redeeming qualities? No way I'm going out with you. And I'm going to tell everybody I rejected you. you, right? Well, she can't reject you because we were too quick and we rejected ourselves for her. And the funny thing is, nobody believes the crap about ourselves that we believe about ourselves, right? I mean, if you ask somebody out and they say no, they're never going to think about it again. But in our heads, we're going to wonder, oh my God, right? And that prevents us from doing it. And fear can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Well, I can't do that. I better not go for that promotion because I don't think I can do it, right? This isn't going to work. I better not try. I might look silly. We've got to go against what our head tells us to do, right? It always says it won't work. They won't like you. They won't accept you, right? Facing the mistakes you have made will be too painful. I better not do it. Don't do what your sponsor says. Stay home and hide, right? Stay safe. We lie because of our fear. We don't lie because we're liars. We lie because of our fear. We're afraid of rejection. We're afraid of what you think about me. We're afraid you're going to leave me. We're afraid that I'm not enough, right? So it's safer to hide, right? I made a mistake and I don't want to get caught. I had a situation where some lady returned a bunch of tile and bought some other tile, and I had to credit her a couple grand and then charge her a couple grand. And I charged her a couple grand, and she called me and said, "Did you credit my card?" I go, "Yeah, I did it. I was a really busy day." About a week later, she called me, "Did you credit my card?" I go, "Yes, it takes 10 days. I did it. Relax," right? So 3 days later, she called me again. I said, and then I looked it up. I forgot to credit her card for 2 grand. So, oh my God. I'm just going to credit her and not call her. That's what I wanted to do. But I called her up. I said, "You're not going to believe this. You were right. I was busy. I apologize. I forgot to do it." And I said, "I'll try to expedite it." And I faced it and I got it over with. If I wouldn't have called her every time the phone rang, I would have been afraid, right? So we go it. So there's a difference between faith and trust, right? Let's say that you're at the circus and there's a guy up there in tights and he's pushing that wheelbarrow over the, what do you call that, tightrope? The tightrope, right? And the guy's got the wheelbarrow and he's skipping across that and you go, I bet that guy's going to make it. I know he's done it thousands of times. I've got faith that this guy's going to do it. I'll even bet half my money that he makes it across that, right? Because I've got faith he's going to do it, right? But what's trust? Trust is, are you going to get in the wheelbarrow, right? Now that's completely different. Completely different, right? So am I going to get in a wheelbarrow with God pushing it across that tightrope? And I'm like, no, you know what? I want to talk about getting in the wheelbarrow. I want to discuss it. I want to read about it, I want to think about it, but I really don't want to get in that doggone wheelbarrow, because what's going to happen is if I get in that wheelbarrow, we're going to get halfway across that tightrope and God's going to look down, oh my God, that's that son of a bitch John Henry. Oh yeah, right, and he's going to dump me and I'm going to fall without a net, right? People say, John, you got to surrender. Your life depends on surrendering. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to surrender. I say the third step prayer. I mean, what I don't understand. How do I surrender, right? So one guy told me what you do is you develop a picture in your mind of what your surrendered twin might look like, right? What your doppelganger who surrendered might look like. So what this guy who surrendered, what does he look like? He might work with his boss and his company as a team instead of berating them and complaining. This guy who surrendered, my twin, might help the new people instead of watching them fail. He might help them succeed. This twin who surrendered might be positive. He might help others. He might get along. He might smile. He might make a difference in somebody's life every day, right? He might grow and give. He might seek to do what he thinks is God's will. Not complain, not be negative, not always put yourself first. Be of service at work, at home, and in this fellowship. That's what my twin who surrendered might look like. Maybe I can try to be like him, right? Maybe I can try to look like him. So make the effort and remember that you don't control everything, you can't control everything, and you don't want to control the outcomes. But if you do your best in every situation, and I know that's a high standard, and there's no way I can do that. But if you try to do your best in most situations, you're done. If you've done your best, you're done, and you don't have to worry about the outcome, right? You just do your best and you live by these principles. Where'd my other book go? So fears, right? When I first started the fears, I was like, well, I don't think I have any fears, right? So I'm not afraid. Well, one guy said, okay, well, are you afraid of large, barking, angry dogs? Are you afraid of a guy coming at you with a gun? Maybe a black widow spider? Well, yeah, I'm afraid of all those things. Okay, John, are you afraid of embarrassment? Yeah, I am. Are you afraid that people might think badly of you? Well, yeah, I am. Are you afraid of dying alone? Well, yes, I am. Are you afraid of cancer? Yeah, when I first sobered up, I had all these crazy ailments that I thought I had, right? Are you afraid that nobody will love you? Are you afraid that when you get sick, nobody's going to take care of you? Are you afraid that God's not going to help you when He really sees who you are? Are you afraid of success and all the responsibilities that go with it? Are you afraid of failure and what people will think about you? Are you afraid of stuff from the past catching up with you? Are you afraid of people from the past catching up with you? Are you afraid of intimacy? Do you even know how to be intimate? Right? All of these things are fears. We've got fears of our marriage, our children, our jobs, the IRS, the police, the feds, the church, right? So fear controls and dominates us, right? And when we've got this kind of stuff going on in our head, we're always afraid and worried God cannot get in. And fears are like resentments. We can only see one at a time, right? We only have one at a time. Are you afraid of divorce, and once you get divorced, the kids won't talk to you? You afraid you're going to lose your position in society? Are you afraid you're going to lose face in front of the people you work with? Maybe you're going to lose your house, a personal relationship. Maybe you're going to go to jail, right? So yeah, I think all of us have a lot of these fears. And fear keeps us from doing things we know we should do, and it also keeps us doing things we know we should stop doing, right? So I like this prayer. Father, show me what it would be like to cease fighting anyone or anything. That comes later in the book. So fears revolve, the biggest fear, the age-old fear that we all live with, right? And we lie about it, and that is when people find out, when they really find out who I really am inside, they're going to reject me, right? When they really know who I am inside, they're going to say, you're not good enough. I don't want to be around you, right? That's the fear that I think many of us have, right? And I want to be liked, and I want to be accepted, right? Well, that fear is crap. I think that when people find out who we are with all of our insecurities and our problems, that's what make us lovable, I think. So our fears revolve around one of the following things. First one is, I'm not going to get something I really want, right? I'm afraid I'm not going to get something I really want. The second one is, I'm going to lose something that I've already got, right? And I mean, that could be material, it could be a relationship, it could be your position in society. So I'm not going to get something I want, I'm going to lose something I've already got. And then a big one for me, because I stepped on the toes of everybody, is I've done something to another human being I shouldn't have done, and I'm worried I'm going to get caught, right? And then when I get caught, I'm going to lose something. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to lose something when they catch me. So we have good fears too. Again, like resentments. God doesn't give us anything that isn't good. We tend to warp it. So I'm a little bit afraid of the dark. I'm not going to be running full speed through a pitch black backyard because I can't see. Right? I can't see. I'm a little bit afraid of heights, climbing a tree because I can't fly. Right? So, we do. Now, if I've got a fear that keeps me from going out at night, that I better look at it. Or if I got a fear of heights that keeps me from riding in an elevator, then I better take a little bit more of a look at it. Now, again, like resentments, fears come from threats to the three basic instincts: our social instinct, our security instinct, and our sex instinct. If my instincts are not under control, my relationship with God is not good, just about anything you say or do can create fear in me, right? And again, fear is incorrect believing, right? Two acronyms that I've heard I kind of like are fuck everything and run, or face everything and recover, right? They're both fear. So what I try to do is I try to go against the committee in my head. My head tells me that doing these steps, doing what my sponsor says it's not going to work, John. Facing the mistakes you've made in the past, it's going to be too painful, John. You better just not do it, right? And again, you know, when you're on your deathbed, it won't be the mistakes that you regret. It's going to be the stuff that you didn't do. You're living in hell when you're scared to death that you won't get something you really want, and through dishonesty, conning and manipulating, you get that thing, and then you're scared to death that you're going to get caught, right? Without God, all I had was a life spent going after money, property, prestige, sex, and I cheated, I lied, I conned, you know, I was dishonest. And I know right from wrong, right? I do know right from wrong. And I feared that I was going to get caught, right? Many names and institutions are going to be on both the fear and the harms and the resentment list. So we've got to be praying through this whole situation. One of my sponsors said the most important thing about prayer, he said there's two things. He says you've got to start and you've got to continue. And he told me that every time you pray, you're going to change just a little bit, just a little bit. And, you know, when we ask God to remove our fear and show us what He would have us be, courage and faith starts to replace fear, right? And again, when the fear goes, when we do the fear like this, again, 95% of these fears are going to leave automatically when we see how stupid they are, right? It's incorrect believing. And again, 5% of them, prayer, therapy, sponsor, right? We can deal with them too, right? And fears, again, fears let us do stuff we know we shouldn't do. It keeps us doing stuff we know we shouldn't do, and it prevents us from doing stuff that we know that we should do. Courage and faith cannot exist on the same plane, just like anger and love, right? That's why we pray for those who've hurt us. Who do I resent? You know, what do I fear? What did they do? Why do I have the fear? What part of self is affected? What feelings did I create in others? Which character defect, column 4, is involved, right? When we go through this process, that constant anxiety and tight feeling in our chest, that racing mind, how many of us, you know, we're going to go have a conversation with somebody and we have 30 different scenarios in our head going on at the same time before we even say hi, right? This stuff tends to go away when we do the 4th step. We get rid of all those voices in our head and all that anxiety, right? And again, you know, it's fear we won't measure up, fear of failure, fear of hard work, keeps us from doing the stuff that we should do. So, I'm just going to run one more column, and then we will get out of here a little bit early tonight. So let's see here. I'll do the IRS, because I was afraid. I was angry at these guys because they were taking all my money, darn it. You know, I used to say, you know, I'm a single white guy and you're taking all my money. Well, you know what? It's the same for every single guy. It doesn't matter who you are, right? So the IRS, I'm afraid of the IRS. They might put me in jail or take everything I have. So I'm afraid of them. Okay, so how does that affect my self-esteem? What we think of ourselves, high or low? Well, you know what? The IRS is calling work all the time. You bet that's affecting my self-esteem. And they were hounding me. Personal relationships are relations with other human beings. I am terrified. I'm at work and I'm terrified. The IRS is calling me. I'm afraid that they're gonna put me in jail or take my money. How does that affect my personal relationships? Our relations with other human beings in the world around us? Well, I got this fear going on in my head. It affected all of my personal relationships. I couldn't even sell. I mean, it was killing me. Security, material, money, property, housing. Yeah, it's affecting my security instinct. Material, they're going to take everything I got. Emotional, you know, maybe. Sex instinct, acceptable sex relations. You know, I'm trying to deal with a significant other when I got this fear rolling around in my head. Absolutely, it's going to mess with that. here's my ambitions, right? Your plans are great desires. And I mean, this was absolutely true. You know, I had a year where I didn't pay any taxes, right? And I had all the other years where I claimed 10 deductions. Am I going to buy a house? Why? What's the use? They're just going to take it. Once I buy the house, it's going to affect my social ambitions. You know, if I get a job and I start making more money, they're going to take half of that. I buy a house or a car, they're going to take that. Sexual ambitions, well, nobody's going to want to be with a guy who's got the IRS that's taken everything he's got, so it's affecting my sexual life. So it's affecting everything, this fear of the IRS. It's just killing me. So now we go to what's the exact nature of my wrongs. You know, and again, you know, this one's easy, but I'm going to put out of my head the fact that they're calling me at work, that they're threatening me, that they're sending me all these letters, right? Just put all of that out of my mind. What did I do? Was I dishonest? Well, yeah, I didn't file 1 year and I'm claiming 10 deductions when I'm a single guy with no kids. I'd say that's dishonest, right? I needed the money for drugs and alcohol, don't you understand? Selfish? Yeah, because I wanted the money instead of them, right? I justified it by saying, my God, you know, I have some expensive habits, right? Self-seeking. What I want matters more than what you want. My needs matter more than yours. Well, I'm not thinking about the fact that, you know, that we've got an army that protects us, that we've got ambulances and police forces and social services that I might need. I don't give a damn about that. I want my money, right? Self-seeking. Frightened, scared to death on this one. Inconsiderate, did I fail to consider how they felt? And keep in mind, this is an institution, their wants, their needs, their beliefs, how I affected them. Well, you know what? If I worked for the IRS and I saw somebody that was cheating them and not filing and claiming all those deductions, absolutely I was inconsiderate. So, you know, this one is a 100% both resentment and fear that was 100% caused by me. Absolutely. And I saw that most of my resentments and most of my fears were caused by me. I had a pretty good childhood. I grew up, I had loving parents. They were busy, but I had a pretty good life. So, I didn't have any of these things that many people, you know, the abuse and the beatings and all these things that many people have. So I was the cause of just about everything on this calling. So again, guys, just keep working on this. Next week, we're going to talk about sex and harms, and then we're going to be writing some summaries. We're going to write like 12 one-page summaries of our biggest ones here so that we really understand it. And we're going to take these things to our sponsor. We will not be meeting the Tuesday after Labor Day. That'll give you one extra week to get your fifth step done. I'll be up in the Boundary Waters that week. So we're going to, when we come back, we should all have our fifth step done, and we're going to move on to 6 and 7. So, does anybody have any questions? I can try to answer them. I may or may not know the answer. Anyway.
So we got the next 2 weeks on...
We've got, next week is going to finish up the 4th step. The week after, we're going to talk about the 5th step. And then we've got 2 weeks to get our 5th step done, to finish the 4th step and do the 5th step. This thing, if you guys, and this, you know, I have no idea. I think God reached out and touched me because I went through this and I actually did it and I got it done. And then when we were on to the 6th and 7th step in Code Blue, I was able to go forward with it because I had done it and I had done my 5th step. And it worked. It worked for me, man. My obsession to drink was removed. A lot of my anger and a lot of my fears were removed, and I started to get a little peace of mind and happiness, something I'd never had before. So this works. So we got to get this done, and you will be amazed. And I don't care if you're doing another one. We can only get better. So, cool. All right, so we've got the 3rd step prayer. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always.